Hello all, and now I wanted to have a little fun giving some social commentary and abridging a couple far-reaching ideas together. Seems to be rather popular on my channel, so hopefully you guys enjoy. But anyway, I wanted to talk about Jouvenel de Bertrand's particular passages on warrior culture. I think it's in book 2 of his masterpiece on power. And there's a discussion group going on Joel Davis's channel that I would highly recommend. They just did part 1 a couple days ago, but I would highly recommend it. It looks like it's going to be really fun. But anyway, I wanted to look at that particular passage because I always thought of anime and its popularity as a sort of hark back towards honor and that sort of adventure for young males, that where anime was kind of this sort of revolutionary energy. It was obviously rather new to the millennial, especially in the West, when I was growing up. And so obviously you have these sort of creative energies, if you want to look at it from a sort of Deleuzian perspective, sort of deterritorialization and reterritorialization of the re-emergence of the new. But anyway, I don't really want to go down a big discussion about art, but nonetheless I wanted to point out its sort of popularity. And I noticed that within particularly the ones that when I was growing up that were really popular, such as Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, I think that you could say that it's safe in these sort of adventure quest sort of animes. Historically, you typically have a ragtag group of misfits that come together under a new shared morality against a different established class. And I always sort of abridge that between the two, and how Bertrand describes the warrior culture of the military man who can't really attain any sort of notoriety in the ancient societies, and resorts to overthrowing the prior model, the prior tradition that the elders usually held over the young men, whether it was monetary or different superstitions that the young men no longer believe in anymore. And obviously comes the establishment of sex, and I think it's also important to see the anime and its self-reflective sort of internet culture attitude of the anime fan usually is this sort of incel character that we always have with our sort of meme culture. I'd also say it's pretty distinct to point out that there's a stark contrast between this sort of creative energy that I think you've seen in anime over the last 20 to 30 years as opposed to cinema and its sort of fall of grace. And I think there's a side commentary that you could leave here with their usage of these sort of World War II Superman-esque cultural symbols, and they're ultimately devoid of meaning and are reduced to these sort of propaganda-esque times of their own time, I suppose. Whereas I think anime is much more in the spirit of this sort of dissident warrior culture, and we see this with the classic anime avatar and the shit poster who always reemerges and sheds a million accounts with different characters. I think that goes hand in hand with the sort of dissident and trying to establish your own values that we see in the sort of will of it. I think there also could be a commentary about the sort of anime as a fictional universe and trying to tap into a world horizon in a sort of a way away from reality, as it were. And so maybe one of those escapist elements is seeing the sort of honor and integrity and actual reliability within these sort of character archetypes, as opposed to the decrepit mental state and erratic behaviors of our contemporaries, and erratic social change, and seeing this sort of repetition within I think these universes and world horizons within these art spheres also has a sort of pleasant attitude towards it, that sort of reliability of narrative, and the reliability of these values reasserting themselves within these different arcs as well. Despite today where friendships are constantly destroyed, we see articles all the time of friendships being almost put in this sort of monetary way of marketing and trying to gauge my way into this scene or this sort of sphere to get my sort of foot in the door for this sort of entrepreneur or becoming a part of the bureaucratic state, whatever the case may be. I think many of us can relate to that sort of feeling of lack of honorable relationships, especially among men, and how that can even be shamed today. You could see that. I think it's kind of funny that Columbus Day was the other day, and you see the usual sort of casting off of the colonizer, but ultimately the Columbus is pretty based for fucking sailing across the oceans to try to find a new distant new world, as it were, and bring about a new conscious structure, as Gebser would talk about. I thought it was always really interesting when he pointed out that in these sort of ancient societies, these primitive societies that Columbus encountered, the animal structure was equal towards man, and the European comes on the horse, he's riding the horse, he's above nature now. And I always thought that was really eloquently put. But anyway, I'm getting kind of off track here. But nonetheless, I think this sort of risk assessment of actually putting something on the line for a greater value and for the long-term benefit is something now in our society that is increasingly becoming more and more taboo and looked down upon. And I think that's very sad to see, especially for young men who are trying to look for these sort of challenges that I think resurface within us all the time. And it's really interesting to see that what will ultimately come of these sort of energies and shared world horizons towards things like anime and honor, as I'm trying to point out in this video. And usually rather mocked. And I think you could also say that a lot of these characters that we navigated towards in these classic animes also struggled with these kind of things, because usually it went against that new code that they were trying to establish. And I think this speaks for itself that young men are in particular striving towards trying to look for a sort of greater gratification than just monetary gain and these obscure constructs of power of the ranks of academics and whatever the case may be. That sort of thirst of wanting explicit power and the responsibility of establishing new values and the danger that come with it, I think is what made anime so particularly popular for young men. And this sort of trope about sexual prudence goes along with it, and I think that really fits nicely with what the warrior culture really stands for on his look towards the pillaging of the young man who wants to establish new values and, you know, wipe the system clean. You notice that most of the heroes don't really look for monetary gain. You know, there might be a few exceptions, but it's secondary towards the, you know, standing of their values, and usually the overthrowing of a tradition prior. We saw that with, you know, someone like Goku. He you know, adopted these sort of earthling you know, morality and ethics that he uses against his rival Vegeta, and, you know, Vegeta eventually converts himself, and we see a new form of ethics and morality achieve out of this sort of brotherhood between these two once rival characters. And, you know, you see that all up and down through anime, and this sort of I think there's actually a particular term for you know, the Naruto fandom, for Naruto's ability for his opponents to see their own failure of their ethics. I think that would be a really, really good example of this, for sure. And so I think that what I'm trying to really get at is, although the warrior culture, especially today, with this sort of you know, bureaucratic, very, very low masculine sort of figures around us, I suppose we should look at, you know, where these emergence of you know, the embers of masculinity. And I think anime in particular had a sort of dissidence towards it, especially in politics. And I don't necessarily mean, oh, anime's a right-wing sort of like thing. No, far from it. I think it has to do more with the energy of young men trying to establish a new set of values, a new set of that sort of yearning for honor that we don't see in our society today. And I think that's what I really wanted to end the video on. And, you know, it was just a fun little idea to throw around, and hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys for my next video on Leibniz.